Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Escape Velocity. I'm your host, Tracey Halverson, and today our episode is, I think, going to be a really great one for anyone who has kind of built a successful life and career only to realize one day that maybe there is something more. Maybe you've hit a transition point in your life, in purpose, in work, and wondering what's next. Over the last few years, that feeling has become increasingly universal thanks to COVID, the rise of AI, increasing isolation and loneliness. We're all feeling more separated, and I think we're all craving more connection, more authenticity, and more of a sense of awe and discovery in our lives. So today, I'm really happy to have Richard Banfield and Devon Warwick-McDonald on the podcast. They are the co-founders of Second Harvest, and very fortunate to know them both as friends as well. They can introduce a little bit of their own background here. I'm not going to go on too long, but thank you both for being here. I'm so excited. First of all, just adore you both and so excited about what you're doing and hearing about the response to it. So with that, welcome and give us a little bit of background about both of you. Richard, you can start.
Well, thank you for inviting us to be part of your podcast. We really appreciate that. Anytime we can spend with you is absolutely wonderful and bonus time. I think that we probably bumped into this problem in the same way that everybody else bumps into it, which is we had to experience something in our lives that was changing the way that we defined success, changing the way that we defined who we were, our roles and identities in that. And, you and I know each other because we both grew up in the same universe of things in the client services world, where we make stuff on behalf of other people, and we've both been running agencies and businesses in that space. Devon is on the other side of the table, so to speak, where she has spent most of her adult life as a venture capitalist and has been the one to grease the wheels of this technology change that we've seen in the last several years, last 2 decades, I guess, 3 decades maybe. Kind of lost track of how many tech decades we've had. Yeah, we're getting old. But yeah, I experienced some big changes. Some of your listeners will know I lost my wife to cancer. I lost my business to COVID. It was just like this, perfect storm of shit things that happened in a short space of time. And Devon had a similar kind of experience. She had lots of things go on in her life that were career changing, personal changing, and perspective changing. And we looked around and we're like, where does somebody go? Where does somebody go for support, for help, for connection, for guidance when you look like us, when you're not a kid anymore, when you're not 20, you're not like rushing off to college to find your purpose.
Yeah.
Where do you go? And we didn't have a good answer initially. And we started looking at our own experiences and we said, who came to our rescue were our friends, people that we care about, the people that we love. And how do we make that happen for other people? So that's really the background to why this thing exists in the first place. And we are experimenting with that, and we're trying to find out the answers to that question. Is like, where do you go? Where's the safe physical and psychological space to go through transition, to go to change, to go through, understanding, awakening, if you will.
Devon, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. So coming from venture capital, and part of my role within venture capital is managing, building a network and, connecting with fantastic executives to get them introduced to our portfolio companies. And so I found myself having conversation after conversation after conversation where the same topics were coming up, or the same sort of reoccurring theme was happening in every single conversation. And that was, I'm at this inflection point. I'm trying to figure out what comes next. I've had this successful run, And now I'm trying to figure out, what do I want to do? Do I want to stay in this particular role as an operator? Do I want to try something different? Would I want to be maybe an investor? Would I want to start my own business? Do I want to just be a consultant? I have all these changes happening in my life. I've got the kids that are leaving the nest and going off to college. That gives me and my wife or my husband more time to be traveling. And just, where do we go from here? And
Yeah.
so there's no playbook for this, right? It requires, I feel like, deep, introspection and figuring out what's right for you, because what's right for me is not what's right for Richard, which is not right for, everyone else. So it's a matter, I think, of like really kind of doing some soul searching, but in a safe space where you can, just have that pause and that reflection. And that's what we're striving to provide.
Um, it's interesting because, I mean, I think it is a universal experience for so many people that that's brought on by any number of circumstances, right? Kids leaving the nest, losing a loved one, going through a big life change professionally or personally, especially when you're sort of in the middle of your life and suddenly what you thought was certain is not certain. And you're faced with the reality that there is the only thing that's certain is uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
And you realize, like, is this it? Where do I find meaning? Because we all want to feel like there's meaning in what we do and what we live through. So I guess, tell me about, you've had 2 retreats so far, 2 different cohorts. Tell me about those first experiences. How did you prepare?
Yeah. How didn't we prepare? So we preface this with the idea that a lot of the folks that are approaching us and asking us to attend or to participate in the retreats, their idea of second half or second chapter or second harvest in terms of their life isn't what the current narrative is. The current narrative looks a little bit like the Golden Girls. Our parents' generation is that kind of, oh yeah, we've done our bits, we've raised the kids, we've got the pension. Now we're going to move to Florida. We're going to drink Mai Tais and play pickleball or whatever your thing is.
Right.
And that's not our generation's thing. I mean, there are probably people who want to do that, but I haven't met them. And certainly the more people that we encounter, they're not asking, where do I find the right community in Florida? They're asking, where is the purpose in the next half of my life? Because I think that I'm probably going to live another 30, 40, 50 years. I better have something figured out before I enter into that period. And so when they show up and ask us about these retreats, we're also in the same mindset of, well, we don't want to just do the playbook thing of like what our parents did. We don't want to have that idea of, well, here's where you would retire, here's where you get the second home, or here's how you give back to your community. We're asking a lot of different questions. So what led to the creation and organization and structure of the retreats is almost an antithesis of what's being done right now. So everything that's being done now, we just said, well, what's the opposite of that? So you're not going to retire. Most people we meet, they're not retiring in the traditional sense. They're not stopping work. So what does that look like? What does the change in pace look like? But also, if it's not retirement, what is it then? If it's not moving to Florida, what is it then? If it's trying to create more community and family bonds or friendship bonds, what does that look like? Because, that's a big concern, is that we now have a loneliness epidemic in the United States and probably in many other Western countries. So to answer your question, we didn't know specifically what the answers were, but we knew what the questions were. And we stepped into this ambiguous, somewhat liminal space where we were willing to live the question, not provide the answer. So instead of saying, we have all the answers, we're the gurus, we have a playbook, we know what you need to do, come on this retreat, you'll get your certification at the end, and then all your problems will be solved. We said bullshit to that. We called ourselves as well out on that and said, we don't know what those answers are. We don't have clarity about what the next half looks like, but we know what the good questions look like. And we're willing to sit with those questions, have good conversations, meaningful conversations about that, and let the answers for each individual emerge specifically for their context. And that was the big breakthrough, is that where a lot of retreats and the wellness community is focused on a guru personality, a playbook, a framework, a certification, we said, how about not doing that? And how about we live the question and step into ambiguity? Because guess what? When you do that, you're also training yourself for what life actually is, which is a series of, I don't know what the hell's going on moments, and a series of uncontrollable things that happen to you where you are expected to adapt and change and respond depending on what those things might be. So we thought it would just be good training to have these 4-day retreats, give people a taste of what that means to live in that ambiguity, live their questions, converse with others about that, find out that they're not unique, that they're not the only one experiencing these problems, and then look around and go, you know what I actually need? I don't need an answer. What I need is a way to live my question. I need a path towards living my question. And this is really important. I need people to walk that path with, because we're not on this planet alone. We're not doing this by ourselves. And the community, the connection, the alliances that form are probably the greatest value that you can get out of these things, is that you walk away with BFFs, you walk away with connections, you walk away with human connection, that you can say,
Yeah.
I've got somebody who's got my back. I'm going to push down this path that I don't know much about, but I know I've got friends who are going to walk with me on this path and help me get there, regardless of what happens.
Well, I love just the whole premise because, as artists, as fellow artists, we know that you have to dive into the uncertainty to get anywhere. You can't wait for there to be a plan and a agenda. And I think that as we have gotten more isolated and there's no support group for life. It's like where do you go to kind of have the space, but also have the trust that you can go on your own journey, but in the safety and camaraderie of other people who are willing to embrace that too, versus feeling like you're going to be a product of someone else's agenda.
Right.
So I think it's a scary proposition for a lot of people, but I think it's exactly what people need. And from the feedback that I've been reading just on some of your posts from the people who've participated, it's amazing to me how much everyone seems to have said, like, I didn't know I could form close relationships with people anymore at this point in my life, that where it's not like we work together. It's not like we're family. We're not neighbors. We're not college friends. Devon, I'm curious how that has struck you, or if you found that to be true from the folks that have already been on some of the second harvests.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's I was just having this conversation with a friend yesterday, and they were asking, how do you get this group of people together and how do you make sure that they all click? And it's so interesting because I feel like these people, there's definitely, Richard and I both have conversations with anyone who expresses an interest, and we make sure that they are kind of coming at this from the right place. But it's funny, the right people sort of self-select. And the people that are like not right for this are like, go away with strangers for 4 days. Like, yeah, no, that's not my jam. I'll stick with the retreat that's coming up down the road at the Marriott. That's more, nothing against Tony Robbins, but like, you know what I'm saying? More of like the self-help. The answers are outside of me versus within me.
Yeah.
And so we get the right people together. That's a huge component of what makes this successful. And the cool part is these people essentially do come in as strangers, but they do trust us enough to know that we're getting the right group together. And there's no sort of preconceived notions of who these people are and what their backgrounds are and what they've gone through in their life. It's a blank slate. But everyone is there with coming in with the right mindset, with an openness, with a certain amount of bravery, because again, they're putting themselves in this sort of unique situation, going to a different country with a bunch of people that they don't know.
Yeah.
And then because of that, it really just allows for some beautiful conversations to happen. Whereas, yes, we all, we're social beings, right? If you're putting yourself in that situation, you're probably pretty social. So you probably have lots of friends and you've got family, but they all know the past versions of you, right? Like they have a certain conception as to who you are and what you represent. But what if you're sort of at that crossroads where you're evolving and you're trying to figure out like what the 2.0 version is of you, and you want to give yourself space to explore that?
Yeah.
It's the perfect opportunity to do it with a bunch of people who you don't really know that well, because they're not bringing any of those judgments to the table. And so that, like being in that environment where you feel sort of fully accepted by the 16, 17 people around you who are just open and listening and maybe sharing ideas, but again, with no background on you, it's amazing. Like we don't even share LinkedIn profiles before, so you're coming in kind of blind.
I think, going back to my own experiences of going through a big, life change, divorce, had to exit my business, really all my rugs of identity got kind of pulled out from under me when I wasn't expecting it. And, every time I kept thinking I was on solid ground, again, something else would get yanked out. And as those things were really getting ripped away, I had to embrace the fact that I was going to change. And that was exciting, as much as it was terrifying. But we do cling on to our identities and our past and how we think of ourselves and what we think we're projecting to others. And a lot of it, to your point, Devon, is built from that shared history we have.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go through a transformation, or you're ready to shed some of that, it's very hard to do it when you're staying, everything else is staying the same. And so I love the idea of the travel, the strangers, the kind of blank canvas that you're creating, surrounded by this embracing of this idea that the answers are inside of us.
Yeah.
That creativity, Richard, we talk a lot about creativity being kind of at the core of a lot of this. And I do believe all people, humans, are creative by their very nature. I think it's how we understand the world and ourselves and our own consciousness and experiences of it. How did your feelings about creativity impact the creation of this, the birth of this idea? And how do you bring that into the experience for people that may not necessarily know that they're creative?
There were two parts to it. One was I needed to be creative to be healed. So when Christy was going through her roller coaster of cancer treatments and whatnot, turning to art, turning to creativity was my therapy. And I realized being creative isn't just some kind of cute act where you're putting ink on a canvas. You are playing this weird version of what it means to feel like a god. Like you are literally creating something out of nothing. And when you're faced with death, when you're capable of creating something out of nothing, it feels incredibly helpful to be reconnected to that source, to that power of like, I didn't have anything, and then suddenly it was there. Oh my God, I manifested, I created, I produced something out of nothing. I think when you look at the relationship between death and life, that is it, right? That is I can create something out of nothing. And the second part of it was the retreats themselves felt like a canvas. So in the creative process of making these things happen, both Devon and I leaned into the creativity that we had within us and painted this experience. And as user experience designers, like this was a dream come true. You were like, oh my God, I have a blank canvas. I've got a bunch of souls that I can introduce into this blank space, this ambiguous space. We don't even know what's going to happen here. Like, it was quite nerve-wracking at times because there isn't a really hard and fast agenda to these things. A lot of people come to this and go, I'm not sure what's going to happen here. What is it that we do? There's a lot of words like mystery adventure on the agenda and no clarification of what that means. It does feel like you have to be vulnerable. It does feel like you have to be open, to Devon's point. That is where creativity happens. Creativity happens when there is a void, when there is a space for that to happen. And you are not person against something. You're not against whatever it is, like, the bad boss, the shitty political situation. You are in relationship with yourself and with your creativity when you have those moments. And that feels very different. That's not like, oh, I'm responding or reacting to the world. You are producing from your source, from your core. And in a spiritual, even mythical level, you are changing the way that you feel about the separateness that is amongst us all, right? The original wound of the universe is that it separated itself from itself, right? All the atoms exploded and separated themselves. And that's the original wound. And all these atoms want to do is get back together again. You can feel it. Like, if you just sit for a moment and you meditate, you can feel all of that separateness trying to heal itself again.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing in our tiny, 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 thin little sliver of a way. We're trying to put a little bit of salve on that wound, a little bit of like, hey, here's some creative salve that goes on the separation so that you feel slightly less separated from yourself, slightly less separated from others. And what emerges from that is the canvas of, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not unique. I'm not experiencing this in isolation. There are others like me. I am communicating with them. I am connecting with them. They are me. They are part of me. They are part of the original experience of coming from the same source, having the same atoms. And that's what's the creative process. It does feel in a way like having a magic wand where you're like, I'm going to create something out of nothing. This is my canvas. Here's what we're all going to do together. And we're going to trust that that process will look like something at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sounds like life.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, it was, but in the planning process for this too, I mean, at the end of the day, we do sort of like have a high level, like, what do we want to be doing during the day, right? Like, how do we imagine this? Or what are, so, Richard mentioned some of these mysteries that we introduce, which I think they started calling it the Easter eggs, like, what's our Easter egg hunt today, sort of thing. And we just have fun with it, right? It's almost like, to the point, and the canvas metaphor is perfect, because in the planning process for this, when we're doing our research and getting to know this, city or location where we're going to host the retreat, it's like, well, what wild and fun and exciting, crazy thing could we do? Like, let's just dream it up. Why not? There's no limit. What could we possibly do? And so that is just so fun, because talk about a magic wand. Like, we were having a conversation one day with an amazing woman named Ari, who had helped us plan the Girona event because she grew up in that area and knows a lot of the people and she knows the language. And we were brainstorming, and I'm like, she said something in passing about, oh, well, like a hot air balloon, maybe we could do. I was like, yes, hot air balloon. I want to do that. Let's make that happen. She's like, oh, okay, I can look up the price. And we'll say, I was like, yeah, I don't care the price. We're doing it. Like, let's go. Let's have some fun with this. And so we try to incorporate those things that have those moments of awe for people. And the people that we get coming to these retreats, like, they're used to being in charge, right? Like, make no mistake about it. These are the bosses. They're the bosses of companies. They are they have large teams. They're the ones that are providing direction. They're the ones that are providing structure. They have children in the home. They're doing the same things. And this is this very cool, rare opportunity to come into an environment where you don't have to be in control. Like, you're safe. We're going to take care of you, right? Like, you don't have to worry about a thing. We got everything set up. We got the food, we got the sleep, everything is happening for you. All you got to do is show up and be yourself and be present.
What
and
a rare.
and just allow what needs to unfold. And that could be in the form of, like, sitting in that silence and, going to this place where maybe you on your sort of everyday life are distracting yourself from uncovering or sort of getting in touch with, or it could be forming that connection, that bond with someone who maybe at face value or in first conversation, you're like, oh, I don't know if I have a lot in common with them. And then a few conversations in, you realize, holy shit, we're so bonded. We have so much in common. In fact, are we third cousins? Like, I'm telling you, the weirdest things happen where it's like, oh my goodness, like, so-and-so, wow. Like, did we grow up in the same neighborhood? Like, we have so much more in common with one another than we realize. And it's only if you're present and you're conversing that you realize that, yeah, there's so much commonality between us all. And there's something so comforting about that.
How have you seen the after effects impact the folks that have been on a few of these so far? What are you hearing?
Oh my God. This is funny because somebody was asking me this morning. One of the guys that attended our second retreat, he and I live reasonably close to each other, and we go for a walk through the forest from time to time. And he said to me, not to get too like businessy about this thing, but like, what's the metric? How do you know this is working? And I said, well, we do have at least 2 people with matching tattoos, that went to a retreat together, and now they're kind of, BFFs. So I don't know if that is the actual metric, but something along the lines of, did this feel remarkable enough to you that you want to share it with others? And I don't necessarily mean share it on social media and broadcast it like I went on a retreat. I mean, do you want your partner, your spouse, your children, your friends to join you on this journey of reclaiming yourself and finding your purpose again? And we hear this time and time again. I went home, I spoke to my husband, I spoke to my wife, I spoke to my partner, I spoke to my business partner, I spoke to my children. I told them what I did. I told them that I tried this for the first time, or expressed this, and had this moment of reckoning or breakthrough. And taking others on that journey with you seems like the way for us to know whether it's working, not because it's good for business, but because it's a ripple effect that goes into the community. And like you said, if Devon and I can contribute in some tiny little way to the world being a slightly better place where people are connected, where they feel less separated, where they feel less disconnected or isolated, then we're doing something. And if that happens in proximity to the real people that matter to your families, to your friends, to the people you work with, then that feels like we're doing something interesting. And then they constantly, I'll let Devon tell you a little bit about what's happening, like functionally what's happening afterwards. But if we can see that ripple going out across the water to these different, connection points, family groups or business groups, then I think we're onto something, and we are seeing that. So that's what's encouraging us. But Devon can tell you a little bit about what she's involved in, because she's got groups getting together for doing, I wouldn't say like follow-on work, but like necessary reconnections. If you
Yeah, I think we're finding just different opportunity. I think one thing we talk about at the retreat as part of the last day, because the way that it's sort of structured at a high level is, the past. We start off talking about our past and our identities, and then we focus a bit more on, okay, well, what does the present look like, and what do we want for ourselves? And then we wrap up with, well, how are you going to put this into motion? And one thing we talk about, and that can be sort of overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I've just uncovered, these amazing insights. And now you feel this intense pressure of like, well, how do I actually do something with this? And where do I begin? And what we talk a lot about is experiment, right? You don't need to have all of the answers coming out. It is, and to Richard's point, it is probably going to be a series of questions that bring upon more questions. And to get there, you got to take action. Richard talks a lot about, action inspires, or mood inspires action. Yeah, mood follows action. Yeah. And so, well, what are you going to do to take those? They don't have to be giant leaps, little steps forward.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what I've seen a lot of people doing. They're experimenting, and we're experimenting with one another, whether it's a business idea or whether it's some sort of concept that they want to test with one another on what's coming next for them in their career, etc. And it's just allowed actually for interesting opportunities to come together where, we had one member who had joined last time. She's been in corporate for decades at this point, and she has a real calling to yoga and connecting with people. And she's been a badass in, a Fortune, I don't know, it's probably 100 organization, managing a large team, but she's like, something is calling me outside of this. I really want to get into yoga. Well, okay, let's run a series of experimentations then. Like, what can you do to start testing the waters? You don't have to quit your job tomorrow. You make a lot of money. You actually really love what you do, but how can you start to, you have this calling. Let's run some things on the side. So she's starting to organize events where pulling together people from Second Harvest in person and online doing a yoga series. And she's testing it out for herself. Is this something she wants to pursue deeper, or is this something that can be alongside her corporate job? And there's a two-way benefit of it, right? Because we get to participate in it and stay connected to one another, but she's also feeling it out for herself.
There's an element of accountability that
Yes.
seems to be a natural outgrowth of these experiences, where now that you've connected and you've kind of unpacked your suitcase and then decided what's going to leave with you, and there's room for all the new, to have that accountability to kind of report back or continue to kind of send in your results of your experiments and your tests seems important, right? Because we don't know, and we won't know if we don't start doing those experiments and testing things out. And that will often, yes, lead to more questions. But if there's not a group to be accountable to, I think that's where people sort of can lose the thread and lose touch with that.
Accountability is absolutely a big part of this, and people are craving it, right? Again, these are the higher achievers. They're like, yeah, I want to show up. I want to do this. And they know, okay, if there's like some sort of milestone, okay, I got to take that action, right? This is the language that we're sort of used to, and what's made everyone so successful in their lives. There's also just getting together and having a reminder of the magic that happened. So you go there and you have this profound experience, and you come back and it's a little like, oh, okay, how do I want more of that? Like that deep connection, that feeling like I can truly be myself. Like I've had a lot of people say it's like almost like I felt like I did when I was a child, like a kid, to just be myself. And they're, so they have a hankering for that. So if you create those opportunities to get them back into that space where they say, oh yeah, that's, even if it's a Zoom call, it's still a reminder of that feeling. And that can do wonders with just, okay, taking that step, like that another baby step after that call. This was a good reminder of what this could be.
I'm so, I have a lot of conversations with people, and I often think, every generation thinks they're living through, once in a human existence, kind of event, or the end times are always, everyone thinks they're living through it. But I do think that only within the last 50 years have we lived in a world where we are bombarded with so much information, with so many prescriptions for how to live a good life, how to find meaning, how to be your best self, and also all the in-streams of news and horrors and the algorithms that know you're going to be most likely to pay attention if they can get your lizard brain really activated. And I don't think we're designed to live with that much input that's all geared towards fight, flight, freeze, or fold, right? And yet we're building systems, and that's what they're designed to do. Because that dictates their success. Our attention goes to those things. And I'm really curious about, how do you find the sort of the unplugging and the detaching from that? How does that impact folks when they're on the retreat?
I thought we were going to have to, everyone was like, oh, is this going to be one of those environments? It's like almost like you see in White Lotus where they're like, okay, I'm going to collect your electronics now and we'll return them upon your exit of Second Harvest Retreat. It wasn't like that. And I was kind of wondering how it would play out. Would people truly be able to detach? And it happened sort of organically. I mean, I didn't see anyone that whipped open their laptop at any point to check email. I mean, did people have their phones? Sure, but they were more taking pictures, I would say, than they were sort of texting or checking Instagram. In fact, I wish I had almost kept a record of my screen time while I was out there. I'm sure I could dig it up on my phone. I bet it was probably, a tenth of what it is on a normal day for myself. Yeah.
But I think, Tracey, to that point, one of the things that we also experience now, for those of you who've had a psychedelic experience, there is that kind of door opening moment where you kind of see things you wouldn't have seen, right? You are made conscious of things that you were not conscious of before. When we go on these retreats, there are no psychedelics, but you do have a little bit of that experience where you see yourself, you see the connections, you see the awakenings, and you can't unsee them. And that's the hardest part for people, is because they're coming back into their typical environments, their normal environments, their normal relationships. But they've seen a part of themselves. They've seen a connection. To Devon's point, they've been seen. They have literally, somebody saw them in a way that they have not been seen for a long time. And then they're coming back. And that is jarring. It's very jarring for them to come back into the world and go, wait, I had such a good experience. Where is it? How can I get it back?
Yeah.
And we're still learning how to figure that out, like how to bring that back. But because it is, like I said, parallel to the psychedelic experience where you can't unsee it, that door is never going to close for you. Now you've seen, you felt, you've experienced what it's like to have one of those moments where you can really tell who you are and what your purpose is. And you can hold on to that. And then we form these alliances. Alliances is a very intentional word. This is not like community, because the community is kind of sitting around watching what's going on. Alliance is, Tracey, what is it that you want and how can I help you get there? How can I be your ally? It's in the word, right? How can I be there to find your path with you and support you and be there if you stumble? That combined with an ongoing, I wouldn't say it's formalized action, but Devon and I spend time reaching out to people, connecting with them again, asking them how, what is it that they're experiencing? And they might say, well, it's been hard coming back. Reentry has been hard. But now that I know what I want and I know who's supporting me, I can get there. And so, yes, the weird thing here is the retreat makes life a little bit harder in some ways, because now you've seen what you really want. And that's good, because now you're motivated to do something about it. You're like, shit, I knew there was something more. I knew that I was hiding my light under a bushel, and now I'm ready to go and do something about it. And I've got the alliances and I've got the connections to be able to do that. And in that accountability sense, they seek the accountability. It's not a bad word, it's a good word. They're looking forward to having people pull with them and drive forward, whatever that looks like. And sometimes driving forward is not the word. It's like, yeah, I realize that I need less of that. I need less striving, to be pushing less. And actually what I need is more sitting on the couch daydreaming. Great. Let's help you do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Richard. It's you sort of come back, and because you've had this experience and you've seen these things, you realize, okay, I need to make some changes. And those could be big changes. They could just be small changes, small sort of behavior changes or forming some new patterns in your life. But at the end of the day, change is uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. I feel like a lot of times the ego sort of tries to resist that growth because it just wants to stay in that loop. That's safe. That's predictable. So you have that ego having you on that loop. but you know deep down, like, yeah, I got to get off that loop. But that friction or that tension between identifying like I'm in that loop and that's not right for me anymore, and actually making the leap into something else, oof, that can be hard. But to Richard's point, yes, we now have this group that we can lean on during that time, and who's likely going through some of that same experience themselves.
Yeah, I think letting go, right, is one of the hardest things to do for the ego. And by I guess just taking the step of going on a retreat like Second Harvest, that's one of the biggest, that you're letting go of control.
Yeah.
You're saying yes to the unknown. And I think that to do that and then come away with so many gifts, I would imagine it would be overwhelming to some extent, but extremely helpful to sort of say, well, how can I integrate these small things into my life so that it becomes more integrated, and I don't need the big shock of doing something like that. It reminds me, everyone knows, right? Like, take more walks in nature, do things that, feel inspire a sense of discovery, do more creative projects. We're all told how fulfilling doing these things are, but yet I see nothing but people going, yeah, I know I should get up and do this first, or I know I should do that first. And so many people don't do it. And sometimes you do need a big immersion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of good intentions, and what we sometimes need is a good kick in the butt, right? Like, I know it's not fashionable anymore to be, tough love kind of fell out of fashion for a while, but I think we do need that. I think we do need a moment where we are facing reality, when we're not just protecting ourselves, where we're not seeking out comfort, where we're not just making things optimal, where we are making things a little harder, where we do put the phone down, where we do go for the long walk, where we do, listen to that voice in our head, which contradicts our ego. Like, a lot of that stuff isn't easy, but it's necessary. It's a necessary part of change. It's a necessary part of growth. We don't want to create another self-help regime that suggests that we are just optimizing ourselves to more productivity. And Tracey, I know you've talked about this a lot. I know that Nancy's talked about it a lot on your podcast. Nobody has ever achieved work-life balance. That is a 100% bullshit idea. There is no such thing as work-life balance. Work is life. Life is work. We are integrated. We are in harmony with these things, hopefully at some times in disharmony with some of those things at other times. And it's not our job to find comfort and optimization in our lives. It is our job to carry the heavy wood, chop the wood, or to carry the water. I can't, I'm messing up my metaphors here, but it's like, you got to do the work. And part of the retreat means pushing you out of your comfort zone. I don't even know why they call it the comfort zone, because it's like the worst zone to be in. That doesn't feel comfortable at all. Like, to go out of the thing that you've become accustomed to and find something better that is more authentic and more aligned with who you are, that's going to take work. That is going to be hard. Like, you're not going to show up at the retreat and be helicopter parented into some change and transformation. That's not going to happen. You're going to be discomfort. There is going to be crying. There is going to be heartache. There is going to be frustration. Excellent. Lean into that. Like, let's get okay with that. Let's get okay with the fact that that's pretty normal. Like, it's okay to not feel okay. And then at the end of that, go, phew, okay, now that we've got all that out of the way, what is it that we need to do in order to sustain that? And for each person, it's going to look different. For each person, their context is different. Their age is different. Their situation is different. All of those things are going to add to the complexity of that. That's okay. We are not trying to build something here that says everybody comes in this factory entry, in the door here, the assembly line, and they go through these motions and they come out fixed at the end. No, we're saying change is hard, but we can do it together. Change is hard, but we recognize and see your changes being something that we're also going through. Change is hard, but there are moments when you can also find some satisfaction at the end of that change that feel good. And that's really worthwhile. That's worth doing. And that's what Devon and I get up in the morning to. She had a meditation session this morning with a bunch of second harvesters. I think we should just call them harvesters, right? I don't know why we had the second, but and they had this meditation this morning, and it was very organic and spontaneous. Like, these kinds of things are happening because they are like reaffirmations of what we're doing is the right thing. And in 10 years' time, there might be 100 people on that call. I don't know. Who knows what happens? But the most important thing that we can do is start with an exposure moment where you reveal what is your true self, your authentic self, the thing that you really want to do, and then provide the alliances to say, we're here for you. It's not going to be easy, but we're going to be here for you. I've had phone calls at 2 a.m. from one of our harvesters who was overseas. He was in Romania or something, and he was calling me. He was like, hey, I just needed somebody to talk to. Great. If that's all we're going to do, then that's the work, and that's fantastic. We can go to bed feeling good about ourselves. Mm-hmm. But don't want to do the scaling thing where this is going to be easy for you. You just have to go to one more seminar. You just have to fulfill one more requirement. None of that makes any sense. It doesn't work. It doesn't lead to real change.
I'm curious, how many people have you talked to who have expressed sort of surprise that they've reached this point in their life and maybe a new traumatic event has occurred? There's something about second harvest, right? And that I think if you live long enough, Richard, you talked about the original trauma of all the universe exploding all of our atoms into separate configurations. But also, I think when we're children, we don't know that life will be so hard, that we will face additional traumas. And, unfortunately, that becomes very clear to people who are born into, trauma by no choice of their own, but also just we will lose loved ones. We will suffer setbacks. We will face illness. We will face disappointments. Did you there's a lot of high achievers that have had a lot of success. Have any of them sort of said, oh my God, I just wasn't expecting to get to this point and find myself here?
I mean, everybody. I think between Devon and I, we probably have about 5 or 6 calls a day now. I don't think I'm exaggerating. Hey, Dev, between us, yeah. I'm pretty sure that almost all of those phone calls start with a little bit of denial, like something's happened, some change has happened, a career change, a personal change, whatever it is. Maybe it's just an internal change. Maybe that you just get older and you're like, oh my God, wait, something else is going on here. And in that moment, there's a little bit of denial. It's like, oh, it's probably just temporary, or it's okay, or, I'll manage through this, or I've got control over this. And then we just keep asking questions. Just like, well, tell us more a little bit about, what's going on and how are you, seeing yourself through this. And by the end of the phone call, they're like, yeah, my life is a complete fucking disaster and I have no idea what I'm going to do about it. And there's something really wonderful about that just the acknowledgement that you have no control over the events in your life, and that your job is not to control events, and your job is not to get optimal around that, but rather be understanding that they will happen and then adapt to it. Have the mindset where, yes, bad things are going to happen, even to good people. And when they do, you will be okay. You will find a way forward. Why? Because billions and billions of other people have done it before you. And you are not alone. Lots of other people are going through this. That's the biggest awakening, is that we knew it was happening to us. And we knew some close friends who were experiencing change. But the fact that there are so many people going through this really just reveals that idea that we're all experiencing some shit at some point. Now, it's not going to happen to us all the time, fortunately, but it's going to happen. There is no way around it. Things are much worse than you think they are, right? They're like, bad things are going to happen. You're going to die. You are definitely going to die, like 100% sure. If you're a human being, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And it might be you get sucked into a sinkhole as you're walking home across the street. It might be you get abducted by aliens. I don't know what's going to happen. You don't know either. And that's kind of the wonderful thing about it, is that once you realize that, it's massively liberating. You go, oh, I am going to die. There's very little I can do about it. Why don't I just get on with the living? Why don't I get on with the loving? Why don't I get on with the hope and the empathy and the compassion? Because that is something I can control. And when you are awake to that, the funny thing that happens, somehow you get luckier. And I don't think it's luck. I think you just start observing the universe in all its beauty, and you start to see all these gifts that are being presented at your doorstep. You're so quick to step over because you're on your way to work. You're on your way to climbing the ladder. And so you don't see all these wonderful things that are happening. And that's really the beauty of this, is that these folks call us. I had a call with a guy about a week ago. He was very guarded. Yeah, things are okay. There's change in my life, but it's acceptable change, or I can't remember what word he used, but something along those lines. And then I get an email from him this morning. Hey, Richard, remember that call we had last week? I need to get together with you. There's some big stuff going on in my life, and I'd love to get a coffee with you. So not always happens in the moment. It doesn't have to be one conversation. We've had harvesters who've gone to the retreat, and then 2 weeks after the retreat, they've called us and said, you fucked up our lives. Like, our lives are no longer the same as they used to be. Now, it took a little while for it all to sink in, or for the admission to kind of show up for them, but it happens. And it happens to all of us. And there are going to be 70 to 80 million Americans retiring in the next 10 years. It's a lot of people going through change.
Yeah, it's change is the only certainty, right?
Absolutely.
What's the most unexpected thing that has happened as a result of you all deciding to do this?
Wow.
Well, Richard mentioned earlier, we did have two harvesters from Austria who ended up, they're writing a book together now. They didn't know each other before. Again, they're not two people that you would have been like, oh, those two folks are going to be best friends. Like, they're quite different. But they saw the commonality in one another. They had a similar sort of shared goal, and they decided, why don't we work on a book together?
Wow.
And then they went on a writing retreat together in out in the Midwest,
Sedona.
the West. Yeah, Sedona. And they got matching tattoos while they were out there. So that was when we saw that come through on the thread. We had a good chuckle over that, but also amazing. Just so that shows, I think, that deep connection. I think one thing that's also surprising, I'll let Richard jump in, is when we were kicking this off, we said, okay, is this going to be something where people go once and they have this great experience and they say, well, that was awesome, chapter closed, and now I'm going to move forward and I'm going to do my or are they going to want to maybe come again? And if they do want to come again, what is the frequency at that? Is it like every couple of years or what? We've now had people who came to Austria who were like, absolutely, I'm going to Spain too. So that was a big shocker that people would be willing to. I think we had 5 repeats from Austria to Spain. And those same people said, what do we got in store for next year?
Mm-hmm.
And the people who had come, to Austria and then Spain said it was conceptually high level. There were consistent themes. It was a different group of people, and I was coming at it from a different point in my journey. And so it was a completely different experience because the topics that we discussed, I was looking at from a slightly different angle. So that has been very surprising to see that there is that sort of desire to want to, keep coming back.
So, yeah, you're stepping into the river, right? And the river is always changing. So yes, it's the same river, but no, it's not the same river, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's also,
for me, the biggest thing that I noticed was my relationship with Devon was so enhanced and just magnificently improved because of these experiences. We were seeing each other and we were seeing ourselves in the reflection of what was happening around us in other people's experiences. And because we were willing to be open and vulnerable, we were having moments where we were like, oh my God, babe, like this is the thing that I do, or this is the person I am, or these are the things that I say. And in being with other people, we are experiencing change as well. We're experiencing an improvement in who we are as people, but also in our relationship. And that's, oh my God, that's like, I feel like I'm addicted to heroin. Like I want that more often. You know, how do we see each other expanding and growing in this relationship, in ourselves, with others? It's too good to be true. It's just amazing. Like it just feels like we are growing because others are growing. And I don't know why I didn't expect it. I don't know why it didn't occur to me that that would happen, but that's a rising tide for all of us.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, one of the things I did back when I was going through my big tumultuous, changes in all aspects of my life is I signed up to go to the mountains of Italy on a painting trip with people I didn't know, and having not painted plein air and landscapes in decades. And if I think about going back to do something like that again, there's a part of me that would be excited to kind of like share what my initial experience was with people who may be doing that for the first time, or continue to connect with people who maybe have done just the sense of giving back that you must get.
Right.
And as you said, Richard, how it's impacted your life, your relationship with Devon, I'm sure it's impacted your life in a similar way, but not many people can say that they get to do that. So what, and for the people that go as well, it sounds like that's something that not just what they get, but what they're able to give to the people that they're with in that space.
100%. Not you see, one of the things that we do is, because we don't claim to have the answers, we are not gurus, we are not seers, we do not stand on stage telling people how to behave or what the answers are. It allows for us to sit at the table together as equals, and everybody is producing and contributing in a way that's feels much more like a circle of trusted friendships than it does a classroom situation. And so we often joke, we go, it's a classroom with no teachers. It's just students. And we're all sitting in circle, and somebody's saying, oh, I had this experience. And another person says, oh my God, I had the same experience. And it turns out that that person is a year or two ahead on that journey and can actually give advice and say, hey, here's what I experienced when I went through that grief, or here's what I experienced when I went through that change. And Devon and I are just watching this going like, what? Like, we don't even really guide much of the conversation to, in the beginning, we're kind of prompting and nudging. And then we're just sitting back and going, okay, let this happen. And it's something really, really amazing, because we are those students as well. We're learning and we're experiencing as much as they are, and they're teaching and they're guiding as much as we were to begin with. It's really lovely.
There's I don't know how to articulate this. It has, Richard, you've written about grief, and if grief is and I think this could be the same for trauma or change. If it's the biggest pieces of furniture in a small room, you're going to keep bumping into it. You're going to keep bruising yourself against it. And so it's not about minimizing those things as much as it's about expanding the room, giving yourself more space to navigate and embrace more of life in amongst the other stuff that, you just don't want to be so smothered by it that you can't help but be pushed up against it all. How does that idea, was that sort of why the travel aspects of this, the being with
Partly,
strangers, just
yeah, I mean, if you look at the logo is two circles, just a smaller circle encased by a larger circle. And that idea that you've just shared is the essential. At the core of all of us are the things that make us who we are. That authentic self that literally pops out of the womb and is like, that's you. It is your core experiences. It's all the mistakes you've made along the way. It's the wisdom that you've gained. And then beyond that circle is an expansive view as well, which is the unknown, which is the one that's still expanding and creating, and in some ways also connecting to the rest of the universe, right? So that second circle is that. And that guides a lot of our conversations. It guides a lot of our decisions. When Devon and I are thinking about something, we go, are we honoring the past? Are we honoring your true self? Are we honoring your mistakes? Are we honoring your grief and your regrets? Because grief doesn't go away. Mistakes don't go away. In fact, if you took away the thing that caused you pain, you would take away the lesson that came along with it.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to diminish your lessons that came from your pain. We don't want to diminish pain itself. We want to expand your life and your experience in a way that while they're still there, they're relatively small compared to what you are now. You're a much more expansive being. And those things exist, but they only exist in a way that informs who you are as opposed to defines who you are.
Yeah, I love that idea. We don't have a expansion limit on our on how we experience life. There is no cap on it. And so it's really up to us. And if we just stay in our small little spot where all we see is the trauma and the pain and the hardship, and we don't realize that that can be the opposing point of tension that can really highlight the opposite, which is extreme joy, extreme connection, extreme peace. I don't think that happiness or joy is a byproduct of ease or comfort. It comes out of those tensions because you can appreciate things so much more fully. And I think our ability to appreciate is boundless. But
it's contrast, right? You see, you can, I mean, you're an artist, so you know this more than most. Without daylight, there is no nighttime, and without nighttime, there's no daylight. Without black, there's no white. There has to be contrast. And the smoothing out and the averaging out of our universe right now, using things like AI, is the hardest thing to watch as an artist. No, I want to see contrast. I want to see tension. A lot of my art pieces over the last couple of years were entitled tension 1, tension 2, I want to see life in contrast. I want to be able to discern between one and the other, to have a taste that says, I like this and I don't like that. That's okay. We spent so much time over the last couple of decades trying to fix everybody's problems, and we also made things a little beige and compromised, right? Now we also need a little bit of that, like, I want to be different. I want to be changed. I want to be odd and weird. Like, that's good, because that allows us to see the edges of our reality, to see those expansive parts of us. And that's cool as well. Like, that's part of this, is I don't want anybody to come out of a retreat going, well, now I'm just like everybody else. I've got my badge and I'm a harvester and I'm fixed now. I want them to come out and go like, God, I'm weird. I'm full of a bunch of strange ideas.
It's the little quirks. It's the little, even just, do you find yourself now when you're looking through an email from someone or a LinkedIn post, if you see a typo, I personally feel a bit more reassured that, oh, they actually wrote this. It wasn't just ChatGPT. How cool is that? Like, for someone who has been typo prone my whole life, I'm like, cool. If I make a little mistake, that actually makes me more special and authentic. I'm pumped about this, right? I mean, this humanness, we're craving the humanness. And at the end of the day, we're humans and we make mistakes. And I think that we're actually at a point in which we're maybe going to appreciate that humanness that much more. Because we are faced with like the output of ChatGPT, which is pretty close to perfection.
It's interesting, all of these systems we've used over time to value things, perfection, how much time it takes you to write something, no errors, well written, well produced, beautifully designed. There's an element of valuation that's getting really messed with now. And I think for the better, because I think that we will be forced to look back to the human authenticity that is really what we're after, not under the veneer of perfection. And now that AI can churn it out, it is about the individual taste, the individual quirks, the individual experience, the lived experience that makes us all unique and yet also connected, that I hope, I think is going to have a much broader appreciation for all of those things.
We're seeing that in the retreats because they are primarily analog, right? They're not digital. They're not a Zoom call. To Devon's point, we're not anti-tech or anti-AI. We're not forcing people to lock up their phones or anything. But we're showing them with this appreciation for the natural environment, for the things that are analog. We realize that a more meaningful conversation happens around the fireplace than it happens in the comments on chat. And because of that, people lean into that and they recognize it as well. They go, oh, this is what I've been missing. And there is a value in that to both of your points, we are starting to see increase over time, because the more digital, the more AI, the more likely it is for us to then say, who am I really dealing with here? Where's the real connection here? And as somebody in the service industry, or the customers, the client services business, Tracey, if you get on a plane and you go and spend some time with somebody, that relationship that you form is worth its weight in gold. And we're going to start seeing that. We see that in software businesses now. They're making better deals when they throw a VIP party or an event or a summit where they get human beings in close proximity with each other. We're seeing salespeople do better when they're willing to get on an airplane and go and visit their customer and talk to them and see face to face. Hey, look, I'm not a machine. I'm the real deal. You can trust this. And that's really interesting, because the pendulum does swing back and forth. For us in our retreats universe, it means that we have to then consider what that looks like going forward. Like how else can we do that? We're considering doing a summit next year where we have not just 20 people, but maybe 200 people. Maybe it's not 4 days, it's only a day, but what does that look like? What does human proximity look like in this age where it's easier just to do a Zoom call? It's easier just to send a text. What does it mean to actually make things harder? I mean, I think I mentioned to you on one of the calls that we had, we intentionally make the retreat a difficult place to be. Like, you have to apply. You've got to go through this process where we're going to interview you, where there's a curation there. You then got to get on a plane. Maybe it's a connecting flight as well. Then you got to get on a train. Then there's a car that's going to pick you up at the station, drive you to the top of the mountain or into the middle of, a medieval village in the middle of nowhere. And you're going to be with strangers, and you're going to be out of your comfort zone. And we're not going to tell you everything that's going to go on the agenda. We're intentionally making these things weird and difficult and strange, because that's what we are seeing as human beings is valued. That's valued. It's interesting for us to have those weird experiences, those strange experiences. And we need to lean into that. That's part of our desire to do this is, if everybody's zigging, could we zag and do something even more interesting?
Yeah. I mean, again, happiness is not a byproduct of ease. We need to embrace these challenges and scary things, I think, to get that tension so that there is something produced that's new, that's creative. Yeah. So tell me, what's next for Second Harvest? What do you got? What's on the radar?
Well, so we're definitely going to do the retreats again. So we've already started to plan for Girona and start to plan for Austria. Those will be they actually are live on our website already. We've got the summit in planning right now. We're going to be updating the website soon. with some details about that. That'll probably be in New England in the springtime. We may do more than just the 2 retreats. We may do 3 or 4. We don't know yet. We are also starting to look at some other ways to do this, whether it's a breakfast, a dinner, something like that. We've got some interesting brands saying they want to be part of this, like, hey, how can we support these experiences? So there's that to experiment with. And then finally, there is a component of this and also a reality that some people need to connect to what we're doing in the digital space, right? We are very, very much analog, and we love that. But there is, like this morning's meditation was a Zoom call. There's going to be a yoga session online because we're spread all over the country. In fact, we're spread all over the world right now. The harvesters are. And so we need to be thinking a little bit about the other ways that people can interact with us. So we'll have some online programming next year as well. In fact, we might launch it before the new year. And that'll allow us people to taste a little bit of this without it being a complete experience, but enough of a amuse-bouche to be able to say, oh, that's what I want. I want more of that.
I love that. I can't wait to see and hopefully join for a lot of these experiences in the future.
We're going to come pick you up and drag you, put you in a white van and drag you off.
You will not have to drag me at all. I'll be outside your door with my bag ready to go. Yay. So for anyone that wants to know more, it's secondharvest.co.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And you can, I'll include links to in the show notes on our website at helloadeo.com, where I've got all the show notes from the episodes. And I think that this is great. Thank you guys both for coming on and just sharing about your experiences in creating this and going through it and what you've discovered. And it sounds like a really endless and wonderful journey to be on. And so I'm just so excited and love everything about it. So thank you both. Any parting words for our listeners?
Well, for the listeners, I want to tell them that Tracey and I have already had a conversation about doing a retreat where art is at the center of the story or theming. We haven't figured out what we're going to do, but keep listening, keep dialing in and finding out what it is that we're cooking up here, because we think that there's something special where that creative, like making of stuff and artistry is actually very much aligned and parallel to the transformation process anyway. So, we'll do it. We just don't know exactly when we're going to do it.
And Devon?
Yeah, I just, this has been such a fun conversation today. I mean, love geeking out over all of this. And Tracey, I've just really enjoyed listening to your podcast and conversations in the previous months. So thank you for what you do and bringing people together and getting interesting conversations started. It's really fantastic.
Well, I thank you. And yes, I cannot wait to get more involved and bring more of that creativity and art to more people. There's that flow state that we all know. We've all felt it at times, and it doesn't necessarily have to happen in front of a canvas, but it's when you feel connected to the universe. Mm-hmm. You're almost not there anymore, and you're just so connected to everything that it can flow through you, and something is created from that, whether that's a change in your own life or a byproduct, a painting or a piece of writing or whatever it might be. I think that's such a magical experience, and it's something that we all need to tap into as often as possible, because I think that's the human experience. So thank you both so much for doing what you're doing to bring that to people, and I will be following along. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.